She accidentally called the CEO by a cute nickname, and he whispered, "Only you can call me that." She only said one word, one small, harmless word, and the whole room stopped breathing. By the end of the day, her job, her reputation, and her heart would never be the same. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. The London skyline pressed gray against the glass of the conference room. The conference room went silent, not the usual corporate hush, but the kind that follows a gasp. Nora felt her stomach drop before she fully processed what had just escaped her lips. "Okay, Teddy, but if we reframe the Q3 numbers using last year's baseline..." She froze. Her pen slipped from her hand. 2 seats down, a senior VP inhaled sharply. Across the polished mahogany table, someone choked quietly on their coffee. He was already standing, Ethan Hale, CEO, untouchable. He had been reviewing a projection slide when she said it. Now he lifted his gaze slowly, eyes narrowing, not with fury, but something stranger, calmer, sharper. His voice cut through the tension. "You? What did you just call me?" Her cheeks burned. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Someone shifted uncomfortably. A whisper flitted past. She could already hear the rumors forming. "Teddy? Did she just call Ethan Hale? Teddy? I'm so sorry, I didn't mean..." Nora's voice cracked. "I meant Ethan, Mr. Hale. I don't know why I..." He was walking now. Not toward the screen, not toward the door, toward her. The room had never felt smaller. "I haven't heard that name in 20 years, he said quietly. "My mother used to call me that." Nora blinked. I didn't know." "I know you didn't," he said, stopping just behind her chair. "That's why it caught me off guard." He leaned down, close enough for only her to hear. His words were barely a breath. "Only you can call me that." A beat of stunned silence. And then, without another word, he turned and walked out, sleeves rolled, hands tucked calmly into his pockets, leaving a room full of stunned executives and a 27-year-old marketing assistant trying not to pass out. 35 minutes later, Nora sat alone on the rooftop terrace, the only place where the air didn't taste like whispered scandal. She was supposed to be celebrating her promotion to strategy liaison, supposed to be reviewing campaign copy, prepping for her first one-on-one with the CEO. Instead, she was nursing a lukewarm coffee beside a small leather-bound notebook, worn at the edges, soft to the touch, that her grandmother had given her when she first moved to the city. A little piece of home. Her fingers traced the faded initials. J.C., Julia Collins, a woman with too much wisdom to be gone so soon. "Don't chase attention," Grandma used to say. "Let your silence make them lean in." Nora had never been one for drama, which made today catastrophic. A chair scraped beside her. She looked up and froze. "Ethan." He set down his own coffee, no tie, no assistant trailing him, just Ethan, sitting across from her on a concrete rooftop like they were colleagues instead of headlines. It was the first time in years he'd stepped away from the executive floor without an agenda, choosing presence over control. "You didn't eat at the executive lunch," he said simply, placing a wrapped sandwich on the table between them. "Figured you skipped it." "I wasn't exactly hungry after..." She gestured weakly. Teddy gaped. He didn't smile, but he didn't look annoyed either. "I meant what I said, you know," she hesitated. "About me calling you that?" He nodded once. "I didn't expect to hear it," he admitted. "And I definitely didn't expect to like the sound of it." That earned a soft laugh from her. Nervous, but real. "Still," she said, glancing around, "I'm guessing not everyone in that room found it charming." "I don't really care what they think." He took a sip of his coffee, eyes still on her. "I care that you didn't mean to humiliate me, and you didn't." That caught her off guard. "You're not mad?" "I've had worse nicknames." Another pause. This time it was Nora who smiled. The sandwich sat untouched between them, an offering of sorts, a micro-peace treaty. He noticed her glance at it. Chicken and avocado, still warm. You remembered. You ordered it at the Q2 review, ate it upside down while typing one-handed. She flushed. You noticed? I notice everything, he said, then softened his tone. Especially when someone looks like they're trying to disappear. A strange feeling settled between them. Not flirtation, not quite, but something attentive, respectful, quietly disarming. And then the door burst open. Mr. Hale, it was Leanne, his sharp-eyed executive scheduler. The Zurich call was moved up. Lines holding. He rose immediately, slipping his phone from his pocket. I'll take it downstairs. But before he left, he turned to Nora. The name stays between us, if that's all right. She nodded, unsure how to breathe. His eyes dropped to the leather notebook beside her hand. Yours? It was my grandmother's. Looks well loved. She always said it would keep me grounded. Ethan gave a single, thoughtful nod. Then he was gone. 10 minutes later, Nora returned to her desk. Her inbox had tripled. Among the clutter, meeting invites, calendar shifts, a typo from finance, one subject line stood out. Let's talk, E.H. She opened it, heart pounding. From Ethan Hale to Nora Collins, 12:30. Friday, my office. Informal. Bring the notebook. She stared at the screen. The CEO had just asked her to bring a family heirloom to an informal one-on-one meeting after she'd called him Teddy in front of 10 executives and half the senior board. Her hands trembled. Was this a joke, a power play, or something else? She barely had time to think when her phone lit up with a new message, not from Ethan, but from someone else entirely. Subject, careful, sweetheart. From anonymous@gmail.net. No body, just that line? Her fingers went cold. Nora reread the message 4 times, each one landing colder than the last. No greeting, no signature, just those 2 words. Careful, sweetheart. Her cursor hovered over delete. Then she stopped, saved it, then stared at it again, wondering which part of her small, quiet life had become threatening enough to warrant a warning. Across the office, someone laughed too loudly at a video on their phone. The room buzzed, as always, with low chatter, keyboard clicks, and the clinking of mugs. But Nora suddenly felt like everyone was watching her, listening. She slipped the leather notebook back into her tote, hiding it beneath her scarf. Its weight had never felt heavier. Later that afternoon, her friend Ruby cornered her in the women's lounge. Okay, spill. Spill what? Ruby narrowed her eyes. Don't play coy. You're trending in the building. Nora blinked. Trending? Everyone's whispering. About you and... Ruby leaned in, eyes wide. Teddy. Nora groaned, sinking onto the bench beside the sink. Please don't say that. I mean, it's better than Ice King, which is what half the staff used to call him. Ruby? I'm just saying, Ruby dropped her voice to a whisper. He's watching you. No, he's not. Oh, really? Because yesterday he asked you to review the new campaign rollout, bypassed Max, which, by the way, made Max twitch so hard I thought he'd short-circuit. Nora exhaled slowly. It was just a slip of the tongue. A very intimate tongue slip, apparently, Ruby teased, bumping her shoulder. Anyway, I brought muffins, blueberry, stolen from the finance floor. No one suspects the quiet ones. Nora smiled, despite the unease still knotted in her chest. They shared the muffin in silence, one bite at a time. It was dry, but the gesture felt warm. A breather. A reminder that even under fluorescent lights and rumor storms, friendship still mattered. I got a weird email earlier, Nora said after a moment. She hesitated, then added, I might have mentioned my notebook once. Casually. I didn't think it mattered. Ruby straightened. Weird how? Anonymous. Just said, careful, sweetheart. The humor left Ruby's eyes. That's not weird. That's creepy. I don't want to make a thing out of it. Nora, you work in the same building where a senior VP once threatened a colleague over parking spots. You need to tell someone. Tell who? The CEO? Oh, right. He's the reason I'm in this mess. Or the reason you're about to get promoted to Chief Enigma Officer. Nora laughed, a short, surprised sound, and Ruby smiled, satisfied to have pulled her out of the fog for even a second. But as they returned to their desks, Nora's mind was already elsewhere. 12:30. Friday, his office. The notebook. What on earth was she walking into? Friday arrived quietly, too quietly. Nora dressed with painful precision, no makeup besides a single coat of mascara. Pale blue blouse, slightly loose, comfortable but sharp. Her grandmother's ring on her pinky, the only piece of jewelry she ever wore on days that mattered. At 12:27 she was outside his door. It was open. He stood by the window, blazer off, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking out as though London's gray skyline had anything worth seeing that day. Right on time, he said without turning. I wasn't sure if I should knock. You always knock, even when I leave the door open. That surprised her. She stepped inside, gently holding the notebook in both hands. He turned, and for the first time she saw something almost soft in his expression. Not gentle. He didn't do gentle, but worn down maybe, like a man tired of being watched. You brought it. She nodded, placing the notebook on the small meeting table near the window. It's personal, she said carefully. I don't usually... I know, that's why I asked. He sat, motioned for her to do the same. No laptop, no assistant, just 2 chairs, 1 notebook, and a silence that stretched and pulsed like a third person in the room. Your grandmother wrote in it? He asked. She started it, notes, recipes, little thoughts. When she passed, I kept it going. What kind of things do you write? She hesitated. I write down what I wish I'd said. Ethan's eyes didn't move. To who? People I've lost. People I'm trying to understand. Sometimes to myself. There was a long pause. He reached for the notebook, not to open it, but just to touch it. His thumb brushed the edge like he was testing a fabric. Then he pulled his hand back. You said she kept you grounded. She did? I envy that. She looked up, surprised. I don't think anyone's grounded you in a long time, she said softly. Before she could stop herself, he looked at her, long and level, not offended, not amused, just seeing her. And then, as if waking from whatever held him there, he leaned back. Nora, he began. But just then his office phone buzzed. He frowned, checked the screen. Blocked ID. Don't pick up, she said. On instinct, he raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because I got an anonymous email the other day. Just 2 words, and now this. He lifted the phone anyway. Ethan Hale. A pause. His jaw tightened. Then, who is this? Another pause. He stood slowly. His voice dropped. Where did you get that photo? Nora stood too. Don't contact this number again. He hung up. What photo? She asked. He didn't answer. He turned to the window again, face unreadable now, walls rebuilt. You should go, he said quietly. Ethan, I said go. She hesitated, picked up the notebook. I didn't mean to cause trouble. He didn't look at her. Too late. She left his office and nearly ran into Max Kensington, VP of Communication, in the hall. He smiled too quickly. Well, well, he said, mock cheer in his voice. Look who's moving up in the world. Nora nodded politely. Excuse me. Must be nice, he added, voice lower now, getting invited to the top floor. One-on-ones with Hale, cozy meetings with no records. She stopped. There's nothing going on, she said. Max smiled wider. Of course not, but people don't care what's true. They care what spreads. He leaned in slightly, dropping his voice to a whisper. Careful, sweetheart. Her blood ran cold. Nora didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every muscle tight with unease. Max's voice still echoed in her head. "Careful, sweetheart." It wasn't just the words. It was the way he'd said them, like a man who knew he'd gotten away with something, but that wasn't what kept her awake. But it was Ethan's face. The moment the call came through, the sharp turn of his jaw, the flicker of something like fear. She hadn't thought a man like him could look afraid. Monday morning, she arrived earlier than usual, hoping to avoid glances, but the office buzzed with a strange tension. People turned when she walked by, not overtly, but enough, like they were trying not to look too long. Ruby met her by the elevator, eyes wide. "Did you see it?" "See what?" Ruby pulled out her phone. "It's all over the internal chat boards. Someone leaked a photo." Nora's stomach dropped. "What photo?" Ruby hesitated, then turned the screen. There it was, a blurry, zoomed-in image. Nora and Ethan in his office, the leather notebook open between them. She was leaning forward, speaking. He was watching her, closely. It looked intimate, too intimate. The post underneath had no caption. It didn't need one. Who would... "Max," Ruby said. "Max." Lips tight. That smug fossil's been trying to climb higher since 2008. Nora took a shaky breath. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know that. You know that, but optics don't care about truth." "And Ethan?" Ruby tilted her head. "Honestly, I don't know what he'll do. But you need to get ahead of this." "Nora, before someone else spins it first." But Ethan didn't call her. Not that day, not the next. The silence stretched. By Wednesday, Nora couldn't take it anymore. She typed "deleted," then retyped a dozen messages before finally sending one. To Ethan Hale. Subject: "Read notebook. I'm sorry if the photo caused trouble. I didn't mean for anything private to become public. If it's better that I step away from strategy meetings, I understand." Nora. No reply. Not that hour, not that evening, not the next morning. Thursday, 4:42 p.m. The sky was bruised with early winter dusk. Most of the floor had cleared out. Nora stayed late, not for work, but because she couldn't stand going home without knowing where she stood. She sat at her desk, fingers curled around a forgotten cup of herbal tea. Then came the soft click of dress shoes. She looked up. Ethan, no assistant, no suit jacket, just his white shirt, sleeves pushed back, and that quietly stormy look she was starting to understand too well. "Walk with me," he said. She followed him into the stairwell, quiet, private, not the elevator. He didn't speak until they were on the landing between the 15th and 16th floors, dimly lit and echoing with faraway hums. "I didn't answer your email," he said, "because I didn't want to put anything in writing that could be twisted." "I understand." He looked at her then. Not like a CEO, not like a man on guard, just Ethan. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this," he said, quieter now. "This isn't your mess." "Yes, it is." "Nora, I made it worse. I joked in a meeting. I didn't think..." He stepped closer. "Do you really think I'm that careless? That I'd bring you into private meetings? Ask about your family? Risk board scrutiny without knowing exactly what I was doing?" Her breath caught. "Then what are you doing?" He paused, a long pause. "Trying not to get you hurt," he said, "and failing." She couldn't look away. "I don't want to be a liability," she whispered. "You're not." "Then why won't you look at me the way you did in that photo?" He blinked once. Then again, slower. "Nora," she waited. And then, as if pulled by something heavier than logic, he reached up, not to touch her, but to brush a strand of hair from her forehead, then tuck it softly behind her ear. His hand lingered near her jaw. "I haven't wanted anyone to see me like that in a long time." She couldn't speak. "You walked into a room full of people who feared me," he continued, "and accidentally called me something no one said since my mother died, and I felt seen in a way that terrified me." Nora's eyes stung. "I don't want to be the reason your name's dragged through whispers." He stepped back, as if catching himself. "I'll fix it, I promise." He turned to leave, But before he opened the stairwell door, he glanced back. "Still," he said, with the ghost of a smile, "you're the only one who gets to call me Teddy." That night, Nora walked home through the quiet streets. No headphones, no calls. Just the wind in her scarf and the feel of the leather notebook tucked under her arm. She hadn't written in it since the day the photo leaked, but tonight she would. She already knew the words. "I think he's lonelier than he lets on. And I don't know if I'm brave enough to love someone who's afraid to be seen, but part of me wants to try. Even if the whole world is watching." She closed the notebook. And when she looked up, Ethan was there, standing across the street, hands in his coat pockets, like he hadn't meant to be seen. She stepped toward the curb. He didn't move. "Nora," he said, voice barely loud enough above the wind, "do you have 10 minutes? For what?" "I owe you a coffee." They didn't go far. Just a quiet little cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, the kind of place that smelled like ground cinnamon and homemade bread, and where no one looked up when the CEO of Hale Stratton walked through the door. The barista didn't blink. Either she didn't recognize him or, more likely, she just didn't care. For once, Ethan let the world move without him, and found he didn't miss the control as much as he thought he would. "Pick a seat," Ethan said, gesturing toward the window tables. "I'll order." Nora hesitated, then chose a corner table with 2 mismatched chairs and a chipped sugar bowl. It felt disarming, which helped because everything else about tonight felt like walking into a fire barefoot. 5 minutes later, he joined her, setting down 2 drinks and a small plate with 2 slices of warm lemon loaf. "You remembered," she said, eyeing the pastry. "Lemon over chocolate," he said, "from your team's holiday meeting last December. You pushed the chocolate cake toward Max and took the lemon twice." She blinked. "That was almost a year ago. I have an excellent memory for things that don't matter. I think that one mattered." He didn't argue. They ate slowly, not because the food demanded it, but because the air between them had changed. Not stiff, not awkward, just careful. Ethan sipped his coffee, then glanced at her over the rim. "You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm not used to being invited out for cake by someone whose employees flinch when he walks past." He smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd met him. "Do I really make people flinch?" "A little. Max actually tripped over his own shoelace last week when you walked into the room." "Did you laugh?" "I waited until I was in the elevator. Then I laughed hard." He shook his head, but his grin didn't fade. Nora picked at her lemon loaf. "You don't exactly encourage warmth." "You know, I wasn't hired for warmth." "No," she said, "but I think it's still in you." He studied her for a long beat. "You don't look away from me," he said quietly. "What?" "In meetings, in hallways. Even now. Most people. They don't know what I'll do next. They keep their heads down." "And that bothers you?" "No," he said. "It bores me." Nora took a slow sip of her coffee, heart ticking faster. The street lamps outside glowed golden. A couple passed by with a dog wearing a plaid sweater. Inside, someone dropped a spoon. She felt like she was in the middle of a scene, one she wasn't sure how to write. "You're not boring." "Nora?" The way he said her name, low, clear, almost like he was trying it out, made something flutter in her stomach. "You're observant, grounded, sharp in ways most people miss." She blinked. "You make it sound like I'm some hidden talent you've just discovered." He tilted his head. "Aren't you?" She laughed softly, caught between flattered and nervous. "Do you always look this tense when someone's being kind to you?" "Yes," he said without hesitation, "especially when it's someone I'd rather keep around." Nora's breath hitched. Before she could find a reply, his phone buzzed. He glanced down, just once, then flipped it over face down on the table. "You didn't answer. It can wait." "Must be nice," she murmured, "being the boss." "It's overrated. Everyone's watching, waiting for a crack." She thought of the photo, the whispering halls, the anonymous email. "You don't get to crack," she said quietly. "No," he agreed. But I did, when I let you in that room with me. She looked up. Do you regret it? His eyes didn't waver. Only that I didn't do it sooner. The words settled between them, soft but undeniable. And just like that, the air shifted again, warmer now, heavier in a way that made her chest feel tight. He leaned in, arms resting on the table. I'm not asking you for anything, he said. Not tonight, not ever, unless it's mutual. It is, she said before she could stop herself. He stilled. You're not a liability, she added. You're not someone I'm afraid to be seen with. Something deep in his expression flickered. Hope? Disbelief? It was hard to say. He sat back, watching her carefully. And then, gently, his voice dropped. Would you let me read it? She blinked. Read what? Your notebook? Her hand instinctively touched her bag, where the leather-bound notebook rested. No one's ever asked that before, she said. I won't press. She was quiet a moment. Then, one page. His brow lifted. His... One? It's a dangerous book, she teased, voice lighter now. If you read more, you might actually start understanding me. He leaned in again, voice low. Maybe that's exactly what I want. They left the cafe just after 8. The city had slipped into that calm pocket between rush hour and nightlife, where the sidewalks thinned and windows glowed amber with early dinners and late books. He walked beside her, not ahead. At her corner, she stopped. This is me, he nodded. Thank you, she said, for coffee, and for listening. He glanced down at her, voice gentler now. Nora. Yes? His hand brushed hers, just the lightest touch, but enough to make her breath hitch. I meant what I said. About what? You're the only one who gets to call me Teddy. Her laugh was soft, almost disbelieving. Then a sudden breeze lifted the hem of her coat. She caught it with one hand, and with the other she instinctively reached toward him for balance, fingers grazing his chest. Just for a second. Their eyes met. Neither moved, and then slowly his hand came to rest on top of hers, not pulling, not forcing, just holding, waiting. A car horn blared nearby. The moment broke. She stepped back, heart pounding. Good night, Ethan. He looked at her for a long second, and then, with a voice low enough for only her to hear, next time, he said, you read me a page. Saturday morning arrived with soft light and a London drizzle. Nora stood at the small kitchen window of her flat, watching the rain trace lines down the glass. Her tea had gone cold. She hadn't touched the toast. The notebook sat open on the table behind her, the page she'd chosen for Ethan still untouched. She had written it a year ago. If love isn't safe, maybe it's real. Maybe safe was never the point. The night at the cafe had shifted something in her, but not everything. There was still the matter of public opinion, of consequences, of the very real risks of being entangled with a man like Ethan Hale. And then there was her family. Her phone buzzed. Mom! Nora picked it up, already bracing. Hi, Mom. You forgot, didn't you? Her heart sank. Oh, no. What did I forget? Lunch, today, at Aunt Miriam's. Everyone's coming. Your cousins are bringing that spinach pie you like, and your Uncle Ray's threatening to bring his guitar again. Nora smiled despite herself. I didn't forget. I just wasn't sure if I could make it. Well, you're going to. It's been months, and your aunt thinks you've become too posh for Sunday family food. And I told her, absolutely not. She's still our Nora, just with better trousers now. Nora laughed, tension breaking just slightly. Okay, I'll be there. And wear something warm. Your cousin Marie said it'll be chilly. I will. Love you. Love you more. 2 hours later, she arrived at her aunt's house, a semi-detached brick home full of laughter, garlic, and mild chaos. The hallway smelled like baked cheese. There were 3 kinds of bread on the kitchen table, 5 conversations happening at once, and a baby crying somewhere upstairs. Nora stepped in, instantly wrapped in hugs, cheek kisses, and a plastic cup of lemonade. "You're glowing," Aunt Miriam said, handing her a plate. "You're either in love or using a new moisturizer." "Both," her cousin Marie added, grinning. "Probably that Hale guy." Nora nearly choked on a cracker. "What?" Marie laughed. "I'm kidding. You think I don't keep tabs on you, Miss Corporate?" "I don't think anyone's keeping tabs." Marie's brow lifted. The living room had been rearranged to fit everyone. Kids sat on cushions eating cheese sticks. Nora's uncle was tuning his guitar in the corner. It was noisy and familiar, grounding. She slipped into a quieter part of the kitchen to refill her drink. And that's when her mother appeared behind her. "He's handsome, you know." Nora froze. "Sorry?" "You're Ethan." Nora turned, stunned. "How do you—" Her mother held up her phone. "I may not follow your company's official account, but I follow some of their staff. Someone posted that blurry photo last week. I didn't say anything because I wanted to ask you face to face." Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It's not what it looks like." That's always the first thing women say when it's exactly what it looks like. "Mom." Her mother's voice softened. "He was looking at you, Nora, in that photo, like you were the only person in the room." Nora exhaled slowly. "Is it serious?" her mom asked. "It's complicated." "I know. That's why I'm asking." Nora sat down at the table. Her mother joined her, hands folded over her own cup of tea. "I didn't want to drag the family name into something messy." "We don't give our name to you so you can protect it, love," her mom said. "We give it to you so you know you're allowed to live fully. Mistakes, mess, and all." Nora stared at her. "And for the record," her mom added, "your grandmother once fell for a married sailor who played jazz clarinet. So you're already one generation cleaner." They both burst into laughter, shaking with it, the kind that lifted something heavy off Nora's chest. It was a tiny emotional victory, shared tea, shared trust, and a long overdue reminder. She didn't need to tiptoe, she just needed to choose. That evening, back in her flat, she wrote something new in the notebook. "Today I told the truth. Not all of it, but enough to feel the wind change. Maybe you only get one great risk in love. The kind you don't calculate. The kind that looks like a mistake until it isn't." She didn't cry, but she felt something rise in her throat. Pride, maybe, or permission. She picked up her phone, drafted a message to Ethan. "Would you still want to read a page? Because I've written a new one. Also, I think I'd like to see you again. Just not at work, somewhere quieter." N. She hit send. 5 minutes later the reply came. "Tomorrow, dinner. Somewhere no one knows my name. Bring the notebook. I'll bring dessert." Sunday evening. Nora took the long route to the address Ethan had sent her, a quiet restaurant near Regent's Canal, tucked behind a gallery and a florist shop. It didn't look like a place CEOs dined. That was exactly the point. She arrived just before 7. The hostess smiled and led her to a table by the fireplace. He was already there, no jacket. Rolled sleeves, hair slightly tousled like he'd walked there in the wind. He stood as she approached. "You look," he started. "Don't say professional," he chuckled. "I was going to say brave." She sat. They ordered, shared wine, talked for nearly an hour, about everything and nothing. Travel, grandparents, the way London looks in fog. It felt normal, real, almost easy. And then, near the end of the meal, just as the tiramisu arrived, Ethan leaned in slightly. "Do you trust me?" She hesitated. "I think I'm learning how." He reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. It was a photo, blurry, grainy, printed on cheap paper, the same photo that had been leaked. She stared. "Where did you get this?" His voice was calm, too calm. "I tracked the source. Legal and IT have been quietly involved for days." She looked up, heart pounding. "And?" "It didn't come from my staff," he said quietly. "It came from someone using your department's shared server." Her stomach dropped. "Someone close to you, Nora. Someone with access." The dessert sat untouched between them. Nora stared at the photo, her breath shallow, heart clenching slowly like a paper being folded into something smaller. "Someone on my team?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch. Not cruelly, just long enough for her to feel its shape. "They used a shared server account," he finally said. "No login trail, but they left a pattern, small, stupid mistakes. I have someone tracing it." Her voice was low. "But you already know who it is." Ethan didn't blink. "Yes? And you didn't tell me?" "I wanted you to see it first." She looked down again. The image wasn't scandalous. Not really. But in the right hands, with the right gossip, it had done damage. To her reputation, to her peace. And it came from inside. She sat back, the air around her suddenly too warm. "I thought I kept my life small enough to avoid this?" Ethan's eyes were steady. "You've outgrown small." He reached across the table, palm up. A quiet gesture. Nora hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His thumb brushed gently across her knuckles, grounding her. "When we started this," she said, "I thought you were the dangerous one." He smiled faintly. "I probably still am. But I never expected to feel safer with you than I do with my own team." He didn't answer. But his hand didn't leave hers. Later, outside the restaurant, the air was cool and still. No wind, no noise. Ethan walked her to the corner where the old stone wall curved toward the canal path. They paused. "I should tell you," she said softly, "if it's someone I know. Someone I've worked with every day." "I don't know what I'll do." "You'll do what you always do," he replied. "Keep your head. Protect your dignity." "I don't want to be gracious," she said. "Not if it's who I think it is." He looked at her, quiet for a beat. "Ruby?" Nora didn't move. "I hope not," she whispered. "I really, really hope not." They stood in the quiet a moment longer, until she reached into her bag and pulled out the notebook, gently wrapped in a scarf. "I brought the page." He looked surprised. "You did?" She nodded, carefully opening to the bookmarked spot. But instead of handing it to him, she began to read aloud. "If love isn't safe, maybe it's real. Maybe safe was never the point. Maybe it's not supposed to protect you from pain, just walk you through it. Maybe real love isn't quiet or clean or manageable. Maybe it shows up, uninvited, like a storm that leaves everything clearer." She glanced up. "I wrote that a year ago, when I thought I was in love with someone who didn't see me." Ethan listened without interrupting. "And now?" She closed the book. "I think I might be standing in the storm." They walked in silence for another block. He didn't try to hold her hand again. He didn't need to. There was something unspoken now, something warmer than touch. At her building, he paused. "Thank you," he said, "for reading it, for letting me see what matters to you." Nora hesitated. "Would you," she began, "would you ever write something in it for me?" He looked surprised, but then he gave a single nod. "I would." She smiled, a soft one, more eyes than lips. "Next time," he said, "bring a pen." The next morning, the atmosphere in the office had changed. Subtle shifts. Heads turned quicker. Conversations cut off when she entered the room. Even her nameplate had been shifted slightly on her desk, like someone had moved it just to see what she'd do. And Ruby, her bright, blunt, fiercely loyal Ruby, wasn't there. Not in her seat, not in the break room. Not online. A note sat on her desk. "Meeting 11 Boardroom C, private. You'll want to be early." M, no signature, but the M said enough. Max. At 10:58, she stepped into Boardroom C. Max was already there, seated like a king without a crown, one hand on a branded notepad, the other stirring sugar into his coffee like he had nowhere else to be. "Nora," he said smoothly, "thanks for coming." "I wasn't given much of a choice." "Well, that's a bit dramatic, don't you think?" She didn't sit. "What's this about?" "Oh, nothing official," Max said. smiling like a man who'd practiced it in the mirror. "Just wanted to give you a little friendly heads up. I'm not interested in games." He leaned forward. "Then you're in the wrong career or the wrong relationship." Her jaw tightened. He nodded to a folder beside him. "In here," he said, "are screen captures, email fragments, internal memos, all showing a pattern of, let's say, cozy proximity between you and Mr. Hale. None of it inappropriate. Not to you. Perhaps, but the board has a different lens." She crossed her arms. "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all," he said smoothly. "I'm warning you, kindly, before someone else makes it official." Her voice was calm now. "You leaked the photo." He didn't blink. "Can you prove that?" "I don't need to," she said. "Because I already know who gave it to you." He smirked. "Then say it." "I'd rather wait for the truth to come from them." His smile faltered for the first time. "I don't think you understand how close you are to becoming a liability," he said, voice lower now. "For the company, for him." "Then I suggest," she said, "you prepare to explain why you've spent weeks collecting personal data on me without cause." He blinked. She turned toward the door. But just as her hand reached the handle, the door opened. And there stood Ruby, pale, eyes red. She looked at Nora like she'd seen a ghost. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It was supposed to be nothing." For a moment, no one said anything. Max sat, smug and waiting. Nora stood frozen by the door, and Ruby, bright, blunt Ruby, looked like she might collapse right there in the doorway. The silence thickened until Ruby finally spoke. "I didn't mean for it to get out. I swear, Nora, I just sent it to Max because I was angry." Nora turned slowly. "You sent it." "I wasn't thinking. I thought—" Ruby's voice cracked. "You were pulling away. Ever since the CEO started giving you attention, I barely saw you. And I thought if I just—" "You thought what?" Nora said quietly. "That you'd humble me? Fix me?" "No." Ruby stepped inside. "It wasn't like that. I wasn't trying to ruin you. I saw how they looked at you. And then, when I saw the picture—" Her voice trailed off, small now. "I was scared," she whispered, "that I was losing you." Max leaned back, clearly enjoying the scene. Nora looked at Ruby for a long moment. "You didn't lose my job." Ruby blinked. "You lost my trust." She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Nora's voice stayed level. And that somehow hurt Ruby more. "I told you things I've never told anyone," Nora said. "You knew what that notebook meant to me. You knew what that photo could do." "I didn't think it would spread," Ruby whispered. "I just thought Max would use it as leverage. That's all." "Leverage?" Nora repeated, stunned. "Ruby, he's been trying to push me out since I was hired. And you gave him ammunition." Ruby's eyes welled up. "I didn't know he'd turn on me, too." Nora looked past her for a long beat. "Then I guess we both misjudged the wrong people." She walked out of the room, past Ruby, past Max, with her shoulders straight and her breath tight in her throat. Back at her desk, she sat down slowly, feeling the weight of it all. She didn't weep. She didn't crumble. But she opened the notebook, wrote quickly. "Today, I let go of something I thought was permanent. I didn't do it to punish. I did it because I finally saw the difference between loyalty and proximity. One is earned. The other just happens to be nearby." She closed the notebook, hands shaking. Then her phone buzzed. "Ethan, I heard about the meeting. Can I see you tonight? I'll bring dinner. You bring nothing, or bring the page. Your choice." That evening, the wind had picked up. Nora stood at her window watching the city blur in mist and headlights. When the intercom buzzed, she already knew it was him. She opened the door before he could knock. Ethan stood there holding 2 brown paper bags, his hair slightly tousled by the wind. His coat still buttoned. "I brought Ty," he said, "the kind that makes your nose run. And your pride." He smiled. Exactly. They sat on the floor, back against the couch, takeout spread between them. Noodles, spring rolls, sauce packets labeled in handwriting that neither of them could read. "Want to talk about it?" he asked gently. Nora shook her head. "Not yet." He nodded. They ate in silence for a while. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I brought something, too." She looked at it, startled. "What is it?" "Something I wrote for your notebook." "You wrote it already." "I wrote it the day you read me your page. I just didn't know if I'd ever be brave enough to give it to you." He handed it to her. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was neat, precise, confident, but not cold. "I didn't want to be seen. I built a life where that wasn't required. Control kept me safe. Power kept me distant. But then you walked in, quiet, observant, infuriatingly calm, and everything shifted. I still don't know what this is, Nora, but I know this. I haven't felt peace in years, until you." She folded the page slowly, her eyes soft. "May I?" He nodded. She tucked it into the back pocket of her notebook, not at the front, not in the middle, but in the section her grandmother had left blank. "I think she would have liked you," Nora said quietly. "I'm glad to hear that, but I'm more interested in what you think." She looked up. "I think you're a man learning how to be brave in a world that only rewards walls." He blinked. "And that doesn't scare you?" "It used to. But now I think maybe you need someone who remembers where the doors are." They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. But as the evening deepened, Ethan stayed, not out of obligation, not out of protection, just stayed. They drank tea, laughed softly over a spilled sauce packet. She showed him a photo of her grandmother holding a fishing rod and scolding a goose. And somewhere in the quiet, a kind of intimacy settled, the kind that doesn't need declarations. Just presence. Monday morning. Nora returned to work early. She wanted to walk into the building with dignity, and on her own terms. The elevator opened to her floor, and there it was, her nameplate, removed. In its place sat a sticky note, 11th floor, office 12C. "You've been reassigned." And she blinked. Then smiled. Office 12C was on the executive floor. The view from Office 12C wasn't panoramic, but it was high enough to see rooftops, distant trees, and a sliver of the Thames on a clear day, which in London meant once a month if you were lucky. Nora stood in the middle of the room, taking it in. It wasn't just an upgrade in location, it was a message. The desk was sleek, the chairs new. A shelf lined the back wall, still empty, and beside her inbox sat a sealed envelope. She opened it carefully. "Nora, effective today, you're officially Strategy Director, reporting directly to the CEO. Expect some whispers? Let them whisper. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was one I'd delayed for years, until I finally trusted myself to step out of control and stand beside someone instead. You've earned this." "For Adria, be no signature, just the single letter." She reread the last line. Let them whisper. It wasn't permission. It was armor. By mid-morning, the news had spread. She passed a pair of VPs in the hallway who didn't even try to lower their voices. Promoted? After all that? She must be very talented or very flexible. Nora didn't stop walking. By the elevator, someone coughed the word favoritism under their breath. And still, she kept going, until she reached the executive floor, where Ruby was waiting. Nora slowed. Ruby didn't speak right away. Then, in a low voice, she said, "I put in my notice." Nora blinked. "You don't have to." "I do," Ruby interrupted gently. "I crossed a line. Maybe I didn't mean to burn the bridge, but I still set the fire." Nora exhaled, her voice soft. "I'm not angry anymore." "I am," Ruby said, "at myself. But I wanted to give you something." She handed over a small parcel, wrapped in tissue. Nora opened it carefully. Inside was a small ceramic pin, hand-painted, shaped like a compass. A gift Ruby had bought at a street fair last summer and never found a reason to give. "Because you always knew where you were going," Ruby said, "even when I didn't." It was a micro-healing. Not full forgiveness, not yet. But something mended. Nora nodded once. "Thank you." Back in her office, she placed the compass pin on the shelf beside the leather notebook. 2 symbols, 2 paths. One chosen with intention. Lunchtime. She had just settled into her desk when her phone buzzed. "Ethan, I ordered delivery. Give me 5 minutes to sneak away from the wolves. Conference room 3C. You know the one. Bring the notebook. And 2 forks." She smiled. Room 3C was an underused space with wide windows and 0 foot traffic. Their unofficial Switzerland. 5 minutes later, she opened the door to find Ethan already inside. Shirt sleeves rolled, tie off, hair slightly out of place. "I brought drinks," he said, "and enough Pad C to paralyze an elephant." They sat on opposite ends of the table, close enough to talk, far enough to pretend this was just lunch. "How are you holding up?" he asked after a few bites. "I've heard the word favoritism 6 times today." He didn't blink. "They said worse when I took the CEO seat." "And how did you handle it?" "I worked twice as hard and said half as much." She paused. "And now?" "Now I look at you and wonder if silence is cowardice." They finished lunch slowly, chopsticks resting between bites. Outside, clouds drifted like spectators. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket. "I brought something." Nora tilted her head. "Another letter?" "Not quite." He pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it and blinked. It was a fountain pen. Elegant, deep navy, engraved with tiny initials at the base. NHC. Nora Hale Collins. Her breath caught. She looked up. "Too forward?" "It's personal," she said. "And permanent." "Exactly." She turned it slowly in her hand. "Why now?" Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Because I'm not interested in hiding anymore. Not from the board, not from the whispers, and not from you." She stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "You realize what you're risking." "I do." "And you're okay with that?" He smiled. Not a public smile, not the one he used in press releases. A real smile. Quiet, certain. "I'd rather risk my reputation than live another year pretending I don't feel what I feel." The air between them grew warmer. Then the door opened. They both turned. It was Avery Lynn, board member, shareholder, and sharp-tongued architect of at least 3 public takedowns in the company's past. She stood in the doorway, eyebrows raised. "Oh," she said, clearly amused. "Lunch hour. How quaint." Ethan stood smoothly. "Avery?" Nora rose, too. "I was just leaving," Nora said, gathering her things. But Avery's gaze never left her. "You know, Miss Collins," she said, tone deceptively pleasant, "for someone so recently promoted, you seem remarkably comfortable." Nora didn't flinch. "Comfort isn't always a sign of complacency." Avery gave a thin smile. "Let's hope not. The board has questions. I'm sure you understand." Nora gave a single nod. "I'd be happy to answer them, on record." Avery blinked, and for just a second, Nora saw it. Respect. Then the door shut behind her. Back in her office, Nora opened her notebook to a fresh page. She clicked the new fountain pen open and wrote, "He gave me his name, not out loud, not legally, but enough for me to feel it. I've never wanted power, but today I held some. And I didn't hate how it felt in my hands." She folded the page gently, slipped it into a new section, one she hadn't dared touch until now, the section labeled Future. That evening, as she left the building, a car was waiting. Black, simple, familiar. She stepped inside. Ethan didn't say a word. He simply reached over and took her hand in full view of the driver. No hiding, no pretending, just her hand in his. like something certain, like something chosen. The boardroom was colder than usual, not in temperature, in tone, glass walls, closed blinds, a table lined with power and posture. Nora walked in alone, no assistant, no Ethan. 7 board members sat before her, all in shades of navy and charcoal. The air smelled like mint tea and tension. Avery Lynn sat in the center. She didn't smile. "Miss Collins," she said, "do sit." Nora did. No trembling, no fidgeting, just the small leather notebook in her lap, worn, quiet, and steady. "I'm told you've accepted a new position," Nora nodded. "Strategy Director." "And that promotion came from Mr. Hale?" "It did." "And prior to that, what was your relationship with Mr. Hale?" Nora didn't blink. "Professional? Respectful? Evolving?" Avery's brow lifted. "Evolving? I believe we're both discovering trust, possibly more." A murmur passed around the room. Avery folded her hands. "So, you admit to a personal relationship with the CEO?" "I admit," Nora said calmly, "that something meaningful has developed. But that didn't start until well after the promotion was discussed. I have all the timestamps and records if you need them." Another board member, older, Scottish accent, leaned forward. "Forgive the bluntness, but this firm's reputation depends on neutrality. You don't think this crosses a line? I think I've spent 4 years in this building being underestimated, talked over, and second-guessed," Nora said. "And if someone finally saw my value and said so, then yes, I'll own that. I've earned it." Avery said nothing, but her gaze sharpened. "You're remarkably composed." "I grew up with a mother who taught me how to stand still while everyone else was shouting," Nora replied. "It's a useful skill." A pause. Then Avery tapped a pen slowly against the table. "Would you be willing," she asked, "to step down from the role for the sake of optics?" Nora sat up straighter. "No." "Even if it cost Mr. Hale his seat?" Nora paused. Then quietly, "I didn't ask for this position to protect him, and I won't surrender it to protect anyone's discomfort." The door opened. Ethan walked in. No apology, no hesitation. He wore no tie, but his presence tied the room into stillness. He took the seat beside Nora. "She's not stepping down," he said. "And if this board feels the need to challenge that decision, then I suggest you be prepared to replace both of us." Gasps, sharp exhales. Avery leaned back. "Is that a threat?" "No," Ethan said. "It's a boundary." He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Inside, you'll find the timeline of Nora's promotion process, signed by HR, legal, and 2 VPs, all dated before any personal communication began. If this board would like to question ethics, I suggest you start with the VP who leaked internal files and is now under investigation. Max. The room shifted. "Now," Ethan continued, "if you're done implying that a woman's advancement is tied to romance instead of talent." "I never said," Avery began. "You didn't have to." The board meeting ended 20 minutes later. No raised voices, but plenty of lowered heads. As Nora and Ethan stepped out into the hallway, he glanced at her, voice low. "You okay?" "I think I left part of my stomach in there." "You were perfect," she smiled. Shaky, real. "I meant what I said," he added. "They don't get to push you out to protect me." "And I meant it too," she replied. "I'm not here because of you, Ethan, but I'm not leaving because of you either." They stood there a moment side by side. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket, a small book pendant, silver, delicate, shaped like an open journal, hung from a fine chain. He held it out. "I had this made last week. It doesn't lock, doesn't close, because I don't want you to feel like anything we are needs to be hidden." Her fingers brushed his. He fastened it around her neck, slow, careful. When it rested against her collarbone, she touched it lightly. "It's beautiful. It's yours." "That evening," she wrote again, "they asked me to give up the thing I've earned, to protect the idea of what's fair. But dignity isn't always polite. Sometimes it looks like not folding. Sometimes it looks like standing beside someone who doesn't flinch. And sometimes it looks like finally being seen and not apologizing for it. She paused, then added, "The board asked me to prove my worth, but I already had. Just no one was looking." She closed the notebook gently, and just as she reached to place it on her desk, her phone buzzed. "Ethan, dinner? My place? No driver, no distractions. I want to show you the part of my life no one else sees." That night, he answered the door barefoot, sleeves rolled, kitchen apron dusted with flour. "You're cooking?" she laughed. "I had help," he said, "but I stirred the sauce and burned the garlic personally twice." His flat was quiet, spacious, but warm. Books, records, soft lighting, a world no one else ever entered. They sat near the windows with a view of the city lights. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. He looked at her. "You've seen who I really am, and you didn't run." "I don't run," she said softly. "I write." He reached over, gently took her hand. "Then write this part down," he murmured. Then he stood, reached into the drawer near the fireplace, and pulled out a ring box. The ring box sat between them. Ethan didn't move. Nora didn't breathe. And for a moment, the quiet was almost louder than anything he could have said. Finally, he looked at her. No smile, no performance. Just that quiet intensity she knew so well. "I need to say something before you open it." She nodded, her hand resting just inches from the box. "I didn't bring this out to rush you," he said. "I know everything's still fragile. The job, the board, your name. I'm not asking for forever tonight." He paused. "I'm asking for next." Her eyes softened. "Next?" she echoed. "Tomorrow, the day after. The kind of next that means I'm here, on purpose." She exhaled slowly, like her body was catching up to her heart. "Open it," he said quietly. Inside was not a ring. It was a key, small, silver, engraved with the letter N. She stared at it, then looked up. "I had a second copy made," he said, "to this flat. I wasn't sure if I'd give it to you, but I realized something the night you read that page from your notebook." "What?" "I'm not building walls anymore." She swallowed hard. "I'm not asking you to move in," he added gently. "I just want you to know there's a door. And it's open." Her hand closed around the key, and with it something in her chest loosened. Later that night, they sat on the floor with bowls of homemade soup, his grandmother's recipe, he'd said, scribbled on the back of a library receipt. The bread was store-bought. The butter was too cold. But the warmth between them? Effortless. "This is better than anything I've eaten in weeks," she said. "You're lying," he replied, grinning. "A little, but I'm still touched." He leaned back against the couch, watching her. "You're different in this space," she said. "I'm different with you. You let go." "I'm still learning." She tapped her spoon against the bowl. Thoughtful. "My mother said something once," she murmured. "She told me, when you find someone who helps you become more of yourself, not less, that's someone you fight for." He was quiet. Then, "Are you fighting for me?" She looked at him. "I think we're fighting with each other, not against, not for. Just beside." He reached over and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. "I like who I am beside you." The next morning, Nora stood in her mother's kitchen, the scent of fried eggs and warm toast floating through the air. She hadn't planned to stop by, but something in her needed anchoring, and her mother always knew when her daughter needed to be grounded. "He gave you a key?" her mom said, brow raised. Nora nodded, sitting at the small kitchen table with a mug of tea. "To his place?" "Yes." Her mom flipped an egg. "Not a ring." "No." "Not yet." Nora smiled. "Not yet." Her mother plated the eggs and sat down across from her. "I like him," she said. "I don't even know him, but I like the way he's changed your posture." "My posture?" "You used to walk like you were apologizing for taking up space." Nora blinked. And now? Now you look like you know you're allowed to be here." They ate in quiet comfort, another shared meal full of meaning beyond the food. Then her mom reached over and took Nora's hand. "I just want to say this," she said softly. "You don't need to win everyone over, not the board, not the press, not even me. You only need to choose your life like you mean it." Nora nodded, throat tight. "I do," she whispered. "I really do." Later that afternoon, she stepped into her office, placed the key carefully beside the book pendant, and opened her notebook to a fresh page. The pen Ethan gave her felt warm in her hand. He gave me a key instead of a ring, and it meant more. Because he wasn't asking for the future, he was offering presence, not a promise I wasn't ready for. A doorway I could walk through when I chose to. She paused, then wrote, "And I will." As she finished writing, a knock came at the door. She looked up. It was Ethan's assistant, looking slightly flushed. "He asked me to deliver this," she said, handing over a folder, "and also this." A white box, no label. Nora opened it slowly. Inside was a small frame, a photograph, the blurry one, the one that had nearly cost her everything, but this time framed, centered, claimed, with a single typed caption beneath, "Seen and chosen." E.A.H. Her heart twisted. She turned the frame over, one more note tucked into the back. "If the world ever questions you again, show them this, not because you need proof, but because love doesn't have to hide to be worth something." She set the frame on her shelf, next to the notebook, next to the compass pin, next to the key, and with a steady breath she looked out over the city, not wondering what was next, but ready for it. It had been 11 months, not rushed, not delayed, just enough time to learn each other's quiet routines, to share breakfasts in silence and laughter over burnt toast, to fight kindly, forgive slowly, and grow something rooted. Enough time to test what was real and know that it was. And outside, the morning was calm, not grand, not cinematic. The breeze moved gently through the trees like it was carrying good news. And the sky, by some rare London miracle, was clear, soft, and quietly blue. Nora stood in front of the mirror. No veil, no glitter, just herself, a simple, soft dress that moved when she walked. Hair loosely pinned, eyes steady. At her neck, the book pendant Ethan had given her. No ring yet. Not yet. But in her heart, every certainty that mattered. They hadn't chosen a cathedral, not a luxury hotel ballroom, just her mother's garden, the place where Nora once jumped rope as a girl, learned to hold her chin up, and was taught that dignity doesn't shout, but it weighs beautifully. The chairs were wooden, the flowers came from the Saturday market, the vows handwritten. And there he was, Ethan, a little scruffier than usual, no tie, no entourage, just a man standing still and hands visibly trembling, but eyes. Calm? When Nora walked toward him, there was no music, just her steps, and the sound of people holding their breath, watching something too honest to be staged. Ethan didn't blink. He smiled. Not like a CEO, not like a man who'd won something, but like someone who'd found home in another human being. Nora's vows. "I won't promise perfection, but I will promise presence. I'll keep telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And yes, I'll keep calling you Teddy, even when your hair is all white." A soft laugh from the guests. "You gave me a key, but it was your silence, your patience, your listening that unlocked everything." Ethan's vows. "You taught me that courage doesn't yell, and that real love doesn't try to rescue. It walks beside you. I promise not to interrupt you. I promise not to mistake your light for my shadow. And I promise never to write the end of our story without you." They held hands. And instead of saying, "Till death do us part," they both said, "Yes," with open eyes. After the ceremony came the laughter. The lemon cake with soft icing, photos clipped on string, barefoot children playing on the lawn. And as the sun began to melt into soft gold, Nora took out her leather notebook. She wrote, "Today, I didn't take a new name. I began a new story with someone who sees me. He's still not perfect, and I love him exactly that way. Signed, Nora Collins, but only because I chose it. She closed the notebook. Ethan rested his chin on her shoulder. Writing about me again? She smiled. Always. They danced barefoot on the grass, no music, no spotlight, just the sound of a love that had survived the eyes of the world and chose to stay anyway. A love story, yes. But more than that, a story of dignity, a second chance. A promise made not in fantasy, but in full awareness, not a rescue. A partnership, the end. Now tell me, would you say yes, with open eyes? Did this ending move you? Rate the full story from 0 to 10, and let me know if you'd like to hear another one. See you in the next love story. One filled with meaning, not just magic.